Hello, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is? It is the News Recap Saturday, so we are going over all of the things over the last week. Yes, we do, because it's the Saturday News Bloody Recap, ladies and gentlemen, welcome here today, where it is 20 past 4 in the afternoon, and I'm not joining you by any tea, but what I am joining you with is something far more interesting. Yeah, I'm joining you with some of the interesting news pieces that we have been seeing over the last week. So if you're new to this, basically what I tend to do, is every week I tend to review some of the more interesting news pieces over the last week, something that has caught my eye. Sometimes it's not even the news piece in it within itself, but rather the discussion, the point of view, the perspective that it raises and that it does create. Sometimes they're 2000 fresh, the best thing I've ever seen. Sometimes they're really bad. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I have two international little discussions, I'd say, more than news stories, for you. One relating to gaming, the other one relating to a success story and all of that good stuff, because, you know, business, that's my jam. And then I have a bit of a personal news and a teaser for next week. Yes, indeed, so stay tuned for that, because now, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting into the SNR of this week. Let's start off with a stylish, affordable success story. Now, due to me running sort of a raw format, I wouldn't even fathom me to remember all of these specific numbers, all of the specific names of all of these specific retailers and suppliers out there in the world, right? So that's why I'm going to talk about this quite generally. So, back in 2012, there was a woman from the UK who was taking a plane to India because she wanted to look up some suppliers, and the reason for that was because she was very interested in producing a French armchair. That's probably what it was. Yeah, a French armchair. Was a specific item that she wanted to look at how it was produced, because she was quite fumbled with. It costed about £1,300. That's approximately right, €1,300. That's approximately like what, $1,500 in the UK. And she was like, this cannot be right. It just simply cannot be right. How can it cost this much money to buy here? There must be a problem with the middleman, the retail store, the transaction cost, the traveling cost. All of these things need to be piled on, and then they are adding the markup on top of that in the store. So she was all like, you know what? I want to go and have a look for myself about all of these things, how these things are produced, why they are produced as they are, and how I can come to produce them more cheaply. So what she did was that she went all the way over to India. She was talking, she was networking at different cafes, she was looking at different suppliers, she was talking with the locals generally, right? Because she wanted to get a good understanding of where these suppliers actually were. And in the article, they were talking about how she found 20 to 30 suppliers in the first month she was there, or something along the lines of that, which is kind of interesting given that the price was still so pricey, let's say, and the markup was so high. Basically, what we got around to here was that she was starting a new company. Now they're rolling out 1,200 different products, but they started with this French armchair in itself, and they were relaunching it to the UK. And for a much lower price. Now, the entire point I want to take up here is that markups, be wary when you put a markup on something. When you make a product rather than a service, right? Because in a service you can still argue, it's me, it's my service, they pay for my personality. But when it comes to a product, sure, they're going to pay for the brand, sure, they're going to pay for that quality control that the brand sort of represents, maybe, right? But still, be careful about the markup, because especially today, when we're living in such a international and globalized world where the internet is playing a huge factor, especially in services, right? You can sort of see how if you have a high markup, people today can actually go to the suppliers that you use and check out how much you actually pay for those goods. which was the case in this story, right? A woman, she was fed up with the markup cost, $1,300 or whatever for this chair. I ain't gonna buy that. I'm gonna go directly to the supplier and see how much it actually costs. Turns out it was a lot cheaper in India. Who could have thought, right? And she relaunched and made her own sort of company out of this idea that she was just doing the same thing that said company did when she was looking at it, but now she did it in a much more efficient and cheaper way, cutting a huge part of the market. So yet again, take that into consideration. The markup these days, you can't really just justify having a markup based on your brand. You need to have a markup that actually makes sense, because today, as I said, people can actually go to the source of where you get your products and they can be like, well, you're paying, you force customers to pay this amount of price. However, we can make this all go around for a much cheaper price, for a much lower markup. So we're probably going to do that and just see how you react. Then you're probably forced to lower your markup, and then people are going to lose faith in you, because why did we even pay that much to begin with if you could lower the markup? And it becomes a huge mess. So just imagine that. Think about that as a company, as a future startup, as a future entrepreneur. Think about that markup, because it makes more, it's more important than you might think. First, you might think, oh, I need to have certain amount of markup in order to regain all of the costs, so to say, to nullify the cost, which is great, because that's probably what you're going to base it entire, the entire idea on, and then probably add on a 2 or 3% so that you actually gain something back to you as well. But it just sounded like with the numbers that they were using in this article, that, a 20, 30, 40, 50, 75% markup was probably a bit too great in relation to that, well, anyone else can just roll in and steal the market away from you if you're going to keep doing this without adding any particular and future or continuous value to what you're actually producing. So that's a huge problem. Anyway, what I actually want to focus on from that story, and what I thought of when I read it, was don't just blindly accept the prices. Think about prices all of the time. And if you think that the price is extremely high and for some reason you can't really find this product anywhere else, well, maybe you've just found yourself a nice, neat little window of opportunity to actually get into that market and go to their suppliers and see, well, if I go directly to the supplier, I'm just paying like, what, a tenth of what I was paying in my, from the retailer. Maybe I can do something with this. Maybe I can relay that same product but for a lower cost. So always think about that. Just don't bluntly accept different markups, because there are people out there who are going to capitalize on a insufficient markup, what you would say, policy, prophecy, implementation, sort of this miscommunication between customer, supplier, and retailer. This sort of, we can have a high markup just because we can. No, you can't, because people are going to capitalize on that you have this wrong suspicion, this wrong implementation between your company, your markup, and the customer. Now, that was a whole lot about that without actually saying that much, right? I get that. I'm fully aware. Let's move on to the second international news story that is all about gaming, because, Fortnite, it has been all the rage for the last, 1 year, the last 12 months, ever since they launched their Battle Royale format. And since it's free to play, it runs so much better than PUBG. I ain't taking a side, but yeah, those just facts, right? And they recently published in-house, right, that they had about 125 million active players. Now, this is a lot. 125 million. That's like 12 and a half times the population of Sweden. Yes, if we just gathered all the people living in my country together, that would be a 12th of the player base of this game. That's ludicrous. That's like huge. That's like half of the US. It's an amazing and astonishing number. That's more people than live in the entire Nordic countries combined. I mean, it's just to put things into perspective. And obviously, with this sort of publicity comes all a matter of different problems, all forms of problems that people want to capitalize on and that people want to talk about. And it's the same bloody problem that we've seen, ever since, big games came around. People have always been like, oh, but people are actually sitting still, they're not out and moving that much. Well, don't you do the exact same thing even if you vary the amount of games you play, or even if you sit at the TV? Because that's basically the exact same thing. Many people are doing that, but not many people are taking that up as a concern, especially not in relation to the game, which just infuriates me. This form of biased response, this sort of biased critique towards something, whilst completely disregarding something else that is equally bad, so to say, if not even worse. I mean, imagine you're sitting down and watching TV, you're sitting down and watching a few series, and do that for a couple of hours. That's probably worse than playing a video game for a few hours, because when you play a video game, you at least sort of, interact with the game. You sort of engage your brain and your thought process in order to utilize how am I going to go about this problem, because you're always presented with the problem in the game, in comparison to when you sit and watch TV and you're just like, yeah, this is what I do now. So it's just ludicrous to me that they're gaining this much critique. Now, obviously, they're going to gain lots of critique because, media is that way, and they want clicks as much as we do, right? They want clicks and views and people who read their stuff as much as anyone. Which is probably why they are focusing on a very biased proportion and a very biased way of looking at a specific problem. But still, it irritates me. However, what I saw today was something truly brilliant. There was a gym in Edinburgh, I believe, who has been incorporating in their gym, at their gym, in the different gym programs that they provide, they've incorporated Fortnite. All things. I mean, just imagine how far things have gone if a gym goes out there and be like, Fortnite, it's a thing. And I'm not saying, right, that they're having PlayStations, Xbox, and computers and Switches in the gym and encouraging people to come in and play in order to activate their brain. That's not at all what they are doing. What they are doing is, as I said, they're having, exercise programs. But in order to cater towards younger audiences, and in order to cater to people who are playing the game, which, as we've established, there's a lot of them out there in the world, they've incorporated some of the dances from the game into their workout into their workout program, which in my mind is excellent. I mean, it's so imaginative, it's so creative, yet it is so simple, so manageable, and so easy to do. Why aren't more gyms doing these things? I mean, if I could go in and do, moves and stuff like that, thematically moved and catered to around all of my favorite games, then I would probably go to the gym even more than I do now. Which is ludicrous to think about, because I go there quite often. I basically live there. But it's so smart to sort of, in order to cater to a younger audience and to people who are getting the critique that, you're sitting still all of the time, this gym is going out and basically saying, well, we're going to incorporate the themes from the game that you like playing. The entire reason for why people are saying, you're sitting still and, you don't do anything. We're going to take that exact thing and turn it around and say, the source of the quote-unquote problem is going to be a solution now, because we're going to engage the same part of you who want to play the game, go and engage you and associate that with actually working out and being out moving around, which hopefully is going to make more people go to the gym and make more people actually be active, which is going to be a bigger and better society. Because, by the way, let's back up. Let's reflect for a bit. I know I said that ain't a problem to sit down and sit still all day. Now, that's not necessarily what I mean. I mean, it is a problem if you sit still each and every day. It is a problem if you don't engage your body and engage your mind in any different way than doing the same thing over and over again. However, what I am looking at is the problem with this very biased critique towards just a single game, when there is, a ludicrous amount of games where this problem is still existing, which nobody tends to be focusing on. And simultaneously, isn't it the same with the book? Because you sit still for hours and hours upon end reading a book. It's sort of the same problem, but people might say, well, you engage your mind when you're reading a book. Well, you're engaging your mind when you're playing a video game as well. It just pisses me off, right? That's just probably my point of view in the entire discussion. But going back to the gym, it's so so clever to incorporate these things, trying to make a con into a pro in that way. Trying to say all of these kids who you, society, critique for sitting still playing this game, we're going to incorporate the themes of the game that you like so that you can associate it with working out. You can come here and we can all be happy together. I mean, just imagine in a few days, in a few weeks, the media is going to be all about, you know, the problems with working out too much is that you don't have time to play video games, and you're just sitting here like, we're never gonna get out of this media picture trying to totally depict us as being wrong all of the time, no matter what we do now, are we? No, probably not. But it's nice to see that they're incorporating this, and it's a brilliant move, and I can't understand why more corporations and more gyms and more everything is not doing this. Because if it is there a demand there, then why not capitalize on that demand and try to cater your, well, presentation around that, and in order to draw in more consumers? Makes sense to me. Now, let's see if we can go through this last one as well. This sort of personalized view around the channel, sort of personalized news, because I know that, well, a red thread has been basically non-existent throughout this entire video, because I have more projects running around today and rolling up. So I have more things to keep in my mind at the moment, which might not necessarily be good, great, but it is how it is. Anyway, let's try to speed through this last one. Now, this last one is finish the Imagination project this week. 2 thumbs fresh, and yeah, it was probably the best project to date, I must say. Much better than this video, so I highly recommend you go and have a look on that if you think that, you know, that's something that can interest you. Imagination, creativity, the child within you, blind thinking, all of those good stuff. I absolutely adored doing it. Something, yet again, as I said in the videos, played close to heart, because I think that imagination is very important for grown-ups and kids alike, and it's just so nice to see that, you know, it incorporated so well and translated so well into making videos, at least more than I thought it would be, because you can't really translate imagination and creativity to words necessarily all of the time, and even if you could, it's very hard for most people to do that, and I would argue that I'm one of those people who have a bit of a trouble doing that, even though I like talking a lot, which not necessarily quantity over quality and blah blah blah, yada yada. Anyway, the next thing, the teaser, so to say, is that if you like the last project, not necessarily that the next project is going to have anything to do with that, but we're going to launch a new project on Monday. Woohoo! With a bit of teaser for actually not just Monday, but that entire project is going to be a teaser for what is going to happen in the future about this channel, sort of in a semi way, even though we're going to talk about that in a few weeks more concretely, more discreetly, more at target, so I'm saying discreetly, more at target. Anyway, mates, that's everything from me today. This is probably one of the most rambly videos I've ever done in the SNR format, which says a whole lot, because there has been some very weird SNRs over the last half year, but, you know, we're continuously improving, and as I said, I have like a million things to do today, which should not be something that I should, you know, blame myself away on. Like, you know, I have other things to do, but it is what it is, right? I mean, it's hard to argue with that. So have a nice one, mates, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.